It's good to be a man, isn't it, men? And the women may be asking, and why? Well, because for men, phone conversations are only 30 seconds long and we're done. When we go on a 5-day holiday, we only require 1 bag versus 5. When clicking through the channels, if we see someone crying, we don't have to stop at that channel. Could you please turn my volume down some?
Okay.
Car mechanics will tell us the truth.
Yeah.
How many ladies here have dealt with car mechanics before and they try to run you over, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't do it anymore. Call one of us men in the church and we'll make sure we get you taken care of.
Amen.
Gray hair and wrinkles only add character to men, right? But I've solved the wrinkle problem. The older you get, the more you eat, the more the skin stretches, no wrinkles. If guys show up at the party wearing the same outfit, you just might become lifelong buddies. And of course, the well-rendered belch once in a while is practically expected from us men. It's called playing the man card, and we do that a lot. Although some of us have been married for a while, we've been tamed. We know. We play the man card when the wife isn't around, because we want to be big, bad, and macho. And if you haven't heard the Man song yet, you got to listen to it.
Yeah.
Maybe you had a wonderful dad and have a lifetime of happy memories, and maybe a few that are not so great. But we need to celebrate the great times that we had with our fathers. But maybe you've lost your dad. Maybe your dad tried his best and wasn't that great a father. Maybe your dad was heartless, cruel man who did things that maybe scared you as a child. Maybe he was just a vapor to you. Walked away a long time ago, leaving a gap, a big void in your life. Maybe you're working your hardest to be a good dad right now, but constantly feel like you may have failed. Maybe you failed as a dad and you're plagued with that guilt for doing that, having that happen. Maybe you were not a biological father, but you were a father figure in someone's life. Maybe you're a single mom and grieve for the dad you wished your kids had, and you're trying so hard to fulfill both roles. Whatever the case, we can still learn from God's truth about fatherhood. And that's why I've named this sermon, What Every Good Father Is. Maybe he got crabby sometimes. Maybe he could have told you things a little bit more gently than he did. Perhaps even blamed or scolded you unfairly once in a while. I see Tom smiling over there. Ryan, is some of this true? But think of all the times when you did something wrong and maybe you got away with it. You're still far ahead of the game. I can tell you as a child, there were many times that I deserved a whipping, and I got away with it. Sometimes because I didn't get caught, but also sometimes because my father had grace on me. Don't you think your father was angry or grouchy every time he looked or talked in a serious way, that maybe he was not that happy? But instead, maybe he was worried about you, with good reason. The next time he gave you a good going over, you took it like a soldier who made a mistake and was being corrected. And don't ever go away with a grudge in your heart against your father. You know, one of those grudges where you held it for 3 or 4 days, maybe longer. You don't have to put a halo on your father's head or wings on his shoulders to get the right picture of him. Just remember that he was not just the man who provided the home in whom you lived, the food you ate, the clothes you wore, and the money you spent. He was and is our Father. Fathers get little enough in return for all they do and give. Love from the children? Certainly. But it's love that's packed in little packages and so tightly wrapped that poor fathers wear themselves out looking for a speck of love that is tossed his way. I can tell you that I did not raise my kids from the time that they were in the age group of 7 to 9. They lived with their mother. And I went through many years of no Christmas or Father's Day and not even a speck of them retaliating or giving. And it hurt. I know it hurt. But I did my best to do my part every day for my kids. And it's a rare day when he has to get out an umbrella to protect himself from the heavy shower of thanks that rains down upon him from his kids. But he keeps on working and providing and giving. He is satisfied with the happiness he provides for his family. You see, that was my dad, providing for his family. I'd like to say my dad was kind of the Ward Cleaver, the Leave It to Beaver dad. Fathers get a lot of gruff and too little credit. So it's good to have a day like today when we pause to honor our fathers. However, we would waste our worship time if we allowed it to evolve into a mushy, sentimental thing about dads. Instead, I would like to share a biblical word having to do with fatherhood. Sadly, many men today are also neglect to see the importance of their role as fathers themselves. Fathers need to be reinstated to a level of importance that God intended for them to be. In fact, I've seen very strong evidence which points to the fact that the reason American morality and spiritual integrity is at an all-time low is because of the declining value placed on the role of fathers in today's society, by others and by themselves. When dad is undervalued, so is a right relationship with Abba, the Father in heaven. Today, my goal is to remind us of our dads, their duties and responsibilities, and whether they were good or bad, so much as to encourage and remind us all of their importance. The respect and dignity of the role of a father. Fathers play such an extremely important and vital role in the families and in our nation today. You see, the Bible, it introduces a hierarchy, a model of the authority in the family. In Colossians 3, verses 18 through 20, which will be up on the screen, it says this: Wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting for those who belong to the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and never treat them harshly. Children, always obey your parents, for this pleases the Lord. I wasn't very pleasing to the Lord when I was young because I didn't obey my parents a lot. It's amazing that you guys are able to sit here and see me today, because I'm sure there were times that they wanted to skin me alive and call me luggage. So in terms of authority, the father is deemed the head of the household. And in 1 Timothy 3:12 it says a deacon must be faithful to his wife and must manage his children and household well. So the father is charged with the responsibility of looking after the best interests of his family, their financial, spiritual, and social responsibilities of taking care of them in all of those areas. When a man becomes a father, he isn't given some sort of rule book on how to conduct himself. No one tells a man how to manage his household. I take that back. If he's not good, his wife will help him with it. And surprisingly enough, there are a lot of ladies today that are the leaders of their household. Even though they're still married to a man, they're not doing what they should be doing. If anybody's watching on Facebook, take it as the truth. So the father is charged with the responsibility of looking after the best interests of his family. When a man becomes a father, he doesn't get that rule book. It's something he picks up from very important sources. First, from his own father, if his own father was good, and how he grew up as a child and interacted with his dad. Second, from the learning that he had from his relationship with God and by the Word of God, if he was introduced to that. I can remember the sense of strength and protection my father exuded. He was always looking after his family. And while he did never have the same tenderness that my mom had, he showed his love equally through his ability to manage the family. People so often have the perception that dads don't love their kids as much as moms do, because they aren't as emotional or endearing. But fathers have the capability to love just as much as any other spiritual being. You see, but with dads, it's expressed in a different way. Instead of a tender hug, it was a strong bear hug. But it always felt good to be loved by dads. Dads are just designed by God to express their love in different ways. They express their love when they guard their family and provide good things to their wives and kids. I have to tell you a story. I didn't put it in here, but I got to tell you the story. When I was 18 years old, I had gone out one night and gone to a buddy's party, got drunk, and had to drive about 15 miles home. I don't know how I made it. I really don't, because even to this day, I remember how drunk I was. Fortunately, I lived in Citrus County, and there are not a lot of people on the roads after a certain time, usually about 7 o'clock at night, because they roll the sidewalks up. But I get home, and I'm getting ready to go to bed, and my dad's sitting there, and he says, "Oh no, son, stay, sit in here with me for a while, let's watch TV together." See, immediately he knew the condition I was in. So finally he let me go to bed, and he said, "Oh, by the way, be up in the morning at 4:30 because we're going hunting." And it's already like 1 in the morning. So I go in, I go to bed, I wake up, I can't hardly walk. I'm still feeling it from 3 hours prior. We get in the Jeep and we start heading north out of Citrus County. You go north, you go across the Cross Barge Canal, and you're in Levy County, and we hunted on property up there. But it was probably a good 15, 20 mile drive. Well, my dad decided, and I want you to know it's wintertime now, it's cold on that side of the state. He decides that he's going to roll his window down and let all the cool air blow on me. And I'm freezing. And he's not saying a word. And I'm wondering in my mind, does he know? We finally get onto the property, and we get up to where we had dog pens out there where we kept the hunting dogs. And as I got out of the Jeep, I kind of walked towards the front of it. And as I walked to the front of the Jeep, I was looking down and I saw a pair of boots. And as I looked up, I had something clobber me, bigger than all get up, and knock me to the ground. My dad was standing there. He looked down on me, and just as quiet as could be, and he said, "Son, you know what that's for, and it'll never happen again." And that's all he said to me. All my drinking years that I drank after that, I never got in a car and tried to drive again. My dad always knew exactly how to discipline me. The one thing you guys got to know is during World War II, my dad was a featherweight boxer in the Army. And he had clubs, and he could use them. And I felt it that day. And I promise you, I still feel it today. When I was 10 years old, my dad and I made a scaled representation of a World War II airfield. He helped me build the barracks and the tower, the runway, the whole bit. He took time off from work to be at the competition I was in. By the way, I won first prize in that competition. That sacrifice was an expression of his fatherly love. He was there on that day. We picked out all the materials to build it. He was right there with me, helping me as I built this scene. As a matter of fact, it was actually fashioned after a real World War II American airfield. He taught me discipline and developed character in me. So good men learn how to be good dads from healthy father-son relationships. As we look out there, almost 45% of the kids grow up today without dads in their homes. Isn't that a crazy statistic? We know there has to be another source of example for a developing dad, and that's the example of our Father in heaven through Jesus Christ.
Amen.
You see, the best dads take their example from that and pass the legacy of the Lord on to their family. The legacy of Christ's love is the greatest gift a father can give. And to be like Jesus in the way when he manages our household is the greatest expression of love of a dad that he can give his family. When Peter asked Jesus about paying their taxes to the authorities, Jesus told him in Matthew 17:27, "However, we don't want to offend them, so go down to the lake and throw in a line. Open the mouth of the first fish you catch, and you will find a large silver coin. Take it and pay the tax for both of us." When he fed that multitude with a few loaves of bread and a few fish, he provided the example of a father who provides all the needs for his family. And he commands dads today to do the same. In 1 Timothy 5:8 it says, "But those who won't care for their relatives, especially those in their own household, have denied the true faith. Such people are worse than unbelievers." I can tell you that sometimes that's an ouch for me, because in the past I've struggled with that. In the same way, our dads had the awesome responsibility of providing for their family. They would be ashamed if they weren't able to, if they became unemployed. The brunt of the responsibility to provide for the welfare of a family unit rests and still rests on the shoulders of a husband or father. Our dads always strive to maintain balance of providing for their family and spending quality time with the family. Scripture tells us that there needs to be a balance in our lives. Because men are hardwired with the desire to provide for their families and make a good home for their children, there's a constant struggle to maintain a balance between giving of their time and giving of things. A man constantly has to look to God for direction and example on how to manage his household. God's example is that he always provided for his children, and he continues to do that. But he never replaces the value of spending quality time with his children by giving them things that they really don't need or just to keep them busy. So while the provision is there in abundance, our Father God always places the greatest emphasis on the time we spend together with him. I can relate to being able to spend time with my dad. As I grew a little bit older, we used to go fishing in Crystal River and go out and fish along the marsh and just spend time together. Again, I said we used to go out hunting. We'd go out and spend the day together. As a child, I sometimes, would get anxious to go home and not really enjoy myself. But I know as I grew older, I thoroughly enjoyed the time that I had with my father. In the same way, a father's duties to provide for his family should not overshadow the importance of spending quality time with them. The father also expresses his love through discipline. When Jesus rebuked Peter, saying, "Satan, get behind thee," he portrayed the power of love through the act of discipline, not wanting Peter to be lost in the old way of thinking. Discipline is difficult, and it is oftentimes received by our children as a bad thing. I remember when my dad used to say, "This is going to hurt me more than it hurts you." And I'm like, yeah, right. But I can understand now as a father, it does hurt more. It's primary fruit of the Father's love and the discipline that He has for His children that makes them who He is. And He shows this love to His children through those things, even though they, or us at the time, don't recognize it. Proverbs 3:11 through 12 says, my child, don't reject the Lord's discipline. Don't be upset when He corrects you, for the Lord corrects those He loves. Just as a father corrects a child in whom He delights. A dad has to discipline because he wants the very best for his children. The discipline of a father sets the whole course of his family. Children raised in the discipline of a strong and loving father have greater discipline as adults, and disciplined adults make great contributors to society and also will pass that to their children. My dad, I remember back in the days when I used to get whoopings. First of all, my mom, she chased me around with a shoe. But I knew it was bad when she said, "Wait till your dad gets home." So he'd make me lay down over the edge of his bed there, and as I was laying there, I knew it was coming. But he calmly would talk to me about what it was that I had done wrong and how I could have corrected it and what I need to do in the future. Very calmly. Unfortunately, I didn't hear a word he said because all I could think about was the pain that was about to be inflicted. Depending on the severity of the crime, I either got one whack or 1 to 3 whacks, depending on how bad it was with his belt. But I can tell you that there were many times that I should have gotten it, but I didn't. See, I was a young man and I was making poor grades, particularly in math. My parents tried a variety of things, none of which seemed to produce any sort of improvement in my math grades. Finally, they decided to enroll me in a private school. I went to an Episcopal school. At the end of that first grading period, I came home and I proudly presented my report card to my parents. They were shocked to find that all of my grades had improved significantly, and most noticeably, I had received my first A in math ever. Mom and Dad were overjoyed and began to question me to determine what it was that had finally produced this improvement they had sought, because I was in the 4th grade. I'd already gone through 4 years of school and my math had always been terrible. So they asked me about this, how it was that brought about this improvement. They said, was it that non-traditional teaching method of the private school? And I said, no. They said, was it the smaller class sizes and more individual attention that you received? And I said, no. And then they said, well, what was it that caused you to have this big turnaround? And I said, well, I replied, when I walked into school on that first day, and the first thing I saw was this man nailed to a plus sign, I knew I'd better take math seriously. You see, I was brought up in the Presbyterian church, but I'd never seen Jesus on the cross before, and they had that in the Episcopal church. Discipline is the act of a father urging his kids to live the right way for the development and growth of his children and his family. Who remembers the movie Remember the Titans? Who remembers the movie Remember the Titans? Remember, remember, remember.
It's a good movie.
The coach pushed those students to the brink of their abilities. Some accused him of trying to ruin them and break their spirits. But by pushing him, he made them very strong. He prepared them for a difficult season of football that was ahead, and in the end, they went undefeated and won the championship because of their discipline. See, if he hadn't pushed them, they never would have pushed themselves. In the same way, a father is made by a father's discipline. And so, like a coach that pushes his players, the father's discipline and urge to his children helps make them stronger. Dad expresses his love through protection. A dad places himself in the way of trouble to protect his family. Jesus applied the example of the greatest love possible when he laid his life down and saved us. In the same way, a father is charged with the duty of laying down his life, his desires, his personal interests for the sake of his family. My father, because he went to school, became a veterinarian, provided the best he could for his family. He loved helping animals. But you see, he always put our family interests before his own. See, my mom and dad are old enough, they lived through the Depression as children. You'd have never thought in the world that they just the way they lived, so simple. But my dad taught me all of those things. My first car, I had to pay for it. He helped me with the down payment, but I had to pay for it. And I had to make insurance payments after that. And it was to show me how I needed to be responsible. Because as it goes on, we transition as fathers, and those of you that are dads know this, you kind of change things a little bit. You know, you've gone from disciplining a child or teaching them things that now you have to teach them a little bit more towards being an adult. Dads are the first line of defense for their family, but they're also the first place that Satan will attack. Because the enemy knows that if he takes out the leader, the subjects will soon follow. Unfortunately, that's what happened to me years ago. I was gone away from home for so much that I was home long enough to give my kids a hug and pretend I was their dad and be gone. And then it led to drinking, which ended up being the most irresponsible thing that I could ever do. I let my kids down for a period of my life, a lot longer than I should have. So now I try to make it up the best I can for my kids and for my grandkids. The primary gift, expression of love from a dad, is the legacy of salvation. The great legacy a father leaves behind is the gift of salvation through Jesus Christ. It's true, when a parent dies, their children expect to receive an inheritance. Sometimes that inheritance involves riches, and sometimes maybe not. In my kids' case, it'll be all my bills. But there's no greater inheritance than the legacy of a father leaves concerning when he leaves it is eternal salvation. Ephesians 6:4 says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord." A dad who loves his family will do his best to lead them towards the Lord. 1 Thessalonians 2:11 and 12 says this, "And you know that we treated each other as father treats his own children. We pleaded with you, encouraged you, and urged you to live your lives in a way that God would consider worthy, for he called you to share in his kingdom and glory." Dads are extremely important people in our lives. Dads are charged with the duties and responsibilities of protection, providing, and interceding for our family's sake. Dads have the power to shape our families and our society by the way we live every day. You see, dads are the first line of defense for our families and are commissioned by God to deliver the good news of the gospel of the message. Come on, guys. See, he does it not just with words, but in the way that he lives every day. Not just by the way he worships and prays on Sunday, but by the way he worships and praises every day of his life. Does this mean that we're taken off the hook if we aren't raising a family at this time? No, absolutely not. We are to still take what God has taught us about fatherhood and apply it to our lives. And as in the case, all my children are grown up now, but I still have grandchildren. And there are also children in this church that need a good example. No matter what your situation is or the responsibility, what your level of responsibility is on this topic, God is the best example for a perfect father. And he's eager for you to come to him with your fatherly needs. Happy Father's Day.